Snow fell in slow, wide flakes over the Volvo plant outside Gothenburg, turning the test track into a silver stage where metal and human fragility met. Inside, engineers crouched over prototypes with an almost priestly quiet, measuring angles, tightening bolts, arguing over foam density like men arguing over doctrine. The cause was simple. Too many lives ending in the blink between steering wheel and windshield. The consequence was anything but simple. Years of research, prototypes that failed, and a cost sheet that made the finance team wince. "You're asking us to invest in lives, not market share?" one executive said during a late autumn boardroom meeting, the lights harsh over polished wood. The chief engineer answered not with rhetoric but with collision data, a quiet litany of sights and sounds he had watched on film. Children unbuckled, drivers pitched forward, tiny bones meeting unpadded metal. He held a sketch of a three-point harness, and in that moment the company had to choose a trajectory. Would they chase the glossy appeal of style and sales, or accept a painful, expensive course that placed human life above quarterly numbers? We cut to archival footage of the first controlled crash tests, cameras clicking as a dummy's head snapped forward, as sensors screamed numbers into tapes. The sound is clinical, but the faces watching are raw. Engineers whisper, "Adjust the lap belt angle. Reduce torso and head excursion." The consequence of each adjustment was another round of trials, another delayed model launch, another round of awkward questions from dealers. Where are the eye-catching features customers want? The cause of this friction was a commitment that had no immediate payoff, no flashy ad campaign, no quick spike on the bottom line. Outside the plant, a salesman rubbed his temples and watched the rain, wondering if buyers would understand a safer car that didn't shout its virtues. Inside, the moral calculus deepened: patent the invention and reap competitive advantage, or share it freely and risk losing leverage in a cutthroat market. The choice they made, to gift the design to the world, felt like bleeding value willingly. It was a corporate act of pain with a paradoxical consequence: acceptance of short-term loss for long-term moral capital. By the time the first seatbelts began to appear on roads, skepticism lingered, but so did a quiet trust that grew with every saved life. Which pain holds you back most? Lack of credibility, fear of judgment, or fear of not making profit? If the story resonates, give it a subtle like and stay with us. In the next segment, we follow how that painful decision rippled outward, through families, regulators, and an industry forced to reckon with a new standard. The testing hall smells of oil and ozone. Under harsh lights, a metal skeleton of a prototype slams into a concrete barrier, while a row of engineers watches the dummy's head hit the steering wheel in slow motion. In the corner, Nils Bolin, or a stand-in engineer whose hands know every rivet and seam, wipes sweat from his brow and says, "It has to hold at the shoulder and the lap, together." The voice is calm, but the room knows the stakes. This isn't about styling or speed. It's about whether a stranger walks away from a crash. Back in Gothenburg, the boardroom hums with a different electricity. A sales director pushes a slide of glossy cars, asking, "How do we sell safety without scaring buyers?" Finance counters with spreadsheets that end in crimson. The chief engineer replies simply, "We don't sell fear. We reduce it." The tension is not cinematic fiction. It's a ledger conflict, months and millions for research that will not buy showroom gloss or immediate headlines. The company pours resources into relentless testing, hundreds of dummies, thousands of simulations, late-night adjustments to belt angles and anchor points. Laboratory victories are small. A microsecond less head rotation, a fraction less chest compression. But each improvement costs production redesigns, dealer retraining, and a marketing story that the public does not yet crave. Dealers grumble that customers care about horsepower and leather, not belts. Advertising executives complain they can't sell a statistic. The moral choice demands a price. Then comes a moment of radical decision. Patent this device or free it to the world. It's more than legalese. It is a test of identity. Choosing to share the invention means relinquishing a competitive edge and accepting short-term financial pain for a principle. In the corridors, some whisper of ruin. Others speak of responsibility. The company signs away exclusivity, and the seatbelt begins its quiet revolution. That choice doesn't bloom overnight. For years the market is indifferent. For every life saved there are missed sales. But the consequence, unexpected, slow, and unstoppable, is trust. People begin to speak of Volvo not as a carmaker chasing trends, but as a guardian that pays the cost of safety. If you were in their seat, what pain would you be willing to bear? Credibility lost today for trust tomorrow. If this resonates, like the video, leave your thoughts below, and subscribe to follow how that trust reshaped an industry. The room smelled faintly of coffee and metal polish, a mid-century conference room where a map of sales territories was nailed to the wall and an engineer's blueprints lay like a dare across the mahogany table. Cameras from the archive flicker. Grainy footage of crash tests, a mannequin hurled against glass, a slow-motion ballet of force and failure. In that moment, the decision was no longer theoretical. Nils Bolin, standing with grease-stained sleeves and an idea that refused to be softened, did what engineers do when confronted by a human cost. He measured it, modeled it, and then refused to let numbers be buried under a lobbyist's argument. "You're asking us to give away a competitive edge," a director said, voice low and exact. "To tell buyers that the car is safe above all else will undermine the glamour we sell. People buy desire, not duty." Bolin did not argue about profit margins. He set a crash dummy into the seat, tightened a prototype across its chest and shoulder, and let a camera record the quiet miracle. The dummy's head stayed, stubbornly, where a head should be. He showed data on paralyzed futures, on a father who would never come back from a country road, on statistics that refused to be scrambled by rhetoric. His face was calm. The moral weight in the room felt anything but. The boardroom split like weather. Some executives feared dealers' letters and quarterly results. Others heard, beneath the spreadsheets, the sounds of ambulances and grieving homes. The vote, after long nights, after threats of stalled marketing campaigns and shareholder impatience, was a fracture line and a promise. Volvo would make the three-point belt standard and not patent it away. "Share it," Bolin urged. "Let it save lives, not our margin." The immediate consequence was stinging. Critics scoffed, sales forecasts trembled, and advertising departments scrambled for new narratives. Dealers grumbled about losing the sex appeal that sold convertibles and chrome. Yet in drivers' schools, in hospital wards, in the quiet sunlight of empty highways, the belt began to do its invisible work. The pain of relinquished advantage turned into the heavier, subtler pain of responsibility, expensive testing budgets, legal defenses, and the grit of standing by a principle when profits wavered. That choice, raw and expensive in the here and now, set a different consequence into motion: trust that accumulates like interest. But how does trust translate into markets, into cultural change, into regulation? In the next segment we follow the ripple, how a single moral decision became a global standard, and what it cost Volvo before the world called it wise. Before we go on, which discomfort holds you back most? Lack of credibility, fear of judgment, or the pressure to hit profit targets? If this resonates, give it a like and subscribe to follow the rest of the story. The crash is small, the scene familiar. A dim highway under Swedish winter, headlights smear in sleet, metal coughs and buckles. In the lab a few miles away, lights hum over a ragged dummy strapped into a new harness. Engineers scribble notes. An older man, Nils Bolin in the imagined doorway, watches with the look of someone who has already decided. You can almost hear the trade-off debate echoing from those boardroom walls. "This will cost us," says a director, voice thick with quarterly reports. "It may cost lives not to do it," answers another, quieter but unyielding. That choice, not a headline-grabbing miracle but a slow, stubborn insistence, is the hinge of this story. Volvo paid in money, patience, and market opportunities. Every hour of testing, every prototype bent in the cold, every skeptical dealer who asked why a safety pitch would sell cars, those were the small penalties exacted by principle. And yet consequence arrived in the form of something more durable than quarterly profit: trust. Families who walked away from crashes, children buckled into seats their grandparents helped design. A brand that could be summoned in an instant when the question was not what kind of car you owned, but whether you wanted to be safe. The emotional ledger is not neat. There were lost sales, tense shareholders' meetings, engineers who left for faster progress elsewhere. But the moral investment reaped returns you cannot reduce to spreadsheets. Credibility that turned into reputation, reputation that became a market differentiator, and a quiet kind of authority that made competitors adopt the same safety measures Volvo once feared would be a disadvantage. If you are making decisions today in business or life, the lesson is practical, not pious. Short-term pain for long-term moral clarity builds something that outlives trends. Which pain holds you back most? Fear of losing credibility, of being judged, or of not making profit? Tell us in the comments, and if this story landed with you, leave a like and subscribe to follow more real, uncomfortable choices that shaped the cars we trust.